Kavya Patel was born in 2001 in a bustling neighborhood of Ahmedabad, Gujarat, where the hum of scooters and the aroma of street-side chai defined daily life. Raised in a middle-class family, her parents, a schoolteacher and a small business owner, instilled traditional values, respect, duty, and the importance of a good marriage. As the eldest daughter, Kavya bore the weight of expectations early on. She was bright, excelling in school, with dreams of studying abroad, but her family's modest means made this a distant hope. Marriage, they believed, was her path to stability, a belief reinforced by relatives who saw a woman's worth tied to her role as a wife. At 19, under pressure from her extended family, Kavya entered an arranged marriage with a man from a nearby town. The union was less about love and more about financial security. Her dowry helped settle family debts. But the marriage soured quickly. Her husband was controlling, and Kavya, ambitious and restless, sought escape. In 2022, she secured a student visa to Canada, enrolling in a business program in Toronto. She told her family the marriage was annulled, but in truth, she left it unresolved, a secret she buried to start anew. In Canada, Kavya thrived, embracing her independence while navigating cultural alienation. She worked part-time at a cafe, her charm masking the stress of debts back home and the fear her past marriage could surface. Her decision to enter a marriage scam, posing as single to wed a Canadian, was born of desperation, possibly orchestrated by an immigration broker promising a path to permanent residency. Arjun Mehra, 29, was the pride of his Indian-Canadian family in Toronto. A software engineer at a tech firm, he embodied the immigrant success story, a University of Waterloo graduate with a six-figure salary and a condo in downtown Toronto. Raised in Brampton, Arjun balanced his parents' traditional Punjabi values with a modern Canadian outlook. Yet when it came to marriage, he bowed to family pressure, seeking a bride who could bridge both worlds, someone educated but rooted in Indian culture. Matrimonial sites like Shadi.com became his hunting ground, where Kavya's profile stood out, a poised, articulate student with a warm smile and shared cultural roots. Arjun was smitten after months of video calls and chaperone meetings. Kavya's stories of her Gujarat upbringing resonated, though he occasionally sensed gaps in her narrative, vague mentions of her past or hurried changes of subject. He dismissed these as nerves, charmed by her intelligence and the prospect of building a life together. His family approved, envisioning a grand wedding to showcase their status. Arjun, unaware of Kavya's hidden marriage, saw her as the perfect partner, unaware that her carefully crafted persona was a facade built on lies. The Indian diaspora in Canada, numbering over 1.4 million in 2025, navigates a complex interplay of tradition and modernity. Arranged marriages remain common, often seen as a pact between families, not just individuals. For many, like Arjun's family, a suitable match upholds social status and cultural continuity. Yet these expectations can clash with Western ideals of individual choice, creating tension for young immigrants like Kavya, caught between personal ambition and familial duty. Immigration scams, particularly marriage fraud, have surged in Canada, with authorities reporting thousands of cases annually. Some involve brokers exploiting vulnerable students like Kavya, promising legal residency for a price. These scams prey on the precarious status of international students, who face high tuition and limited work options. Kavya's case reflects this trend. A hidden marriage left unresolved in India, leveraged for financial gain or a Canadian visa. Gender dynamics further complicate the narrative. In some South Asian communities, a woman's honor is tied to her fidelity and obedience, while men face pressure to protect family reputation. Arjun's eventual rage stems from this cultural script, where betrayal, especially by a bride, carries profound shame. The wedding of Kavya Patel and Arjun Mehra, set for a crisp spring day in 2025, was a spectacle of cultural splendor at a lavish Toronto banquet hall. The venue, adorned with marigold garlands and twinkling fairy lights, buzzed with over 300 guests, family from Brampton, friends from Arjun's tech circle, and distant relatives flown in from Gujarat and Punjab. The air carried the scent of jasmine and sizzling tandoori, while a live dole band set a festive rhythm. Kavya, radiant in a crimson lehenga embroidered with gold zari, moved through the rituals with practiced grace. The Jaimala exchange, the sought fear around the sacred fire, and the sindoor marking her as Arjun's bride. Arjun, dashing in a cream sherwani, beamed with pride, his parents glowing at the union's promise of tradition and prosperity. Pre-wedding festivities had unfolded over days, Mehndi nights filled with henna and laughter, a Sangeet with Bollywood dance performances, and a haldi ceremony where turmeric paste blessed the couple. Guests marveled at the seamless blend of Indian tradition and Canadian flair, from the multilingual priest to the fusion menu of butter chicken and poutine. Social media buzzed with hashtags like Kavya Arjun Forever, capturing candid moments of the couple's smiles. Yet beneath the pageantry, Kavya's composed demeanor hid a racing heart, aware that her carefully guarded secret, a prior marriage in India, could unravel everything. As the wedding day progressed, subtle cracks in Kavya's facade began to surface. Arjun, ever observant, noticed her unease during quieter moments. At the Sangeet, she excused herself abruptly when her phone buzzed, claiming it was a cousin's call. During a pre-wedding dinner, she deflected questions about her childhood friends, saying they'd lost touch. Arjun, caught up in the whirlwind of planning, initially brushed these off as wedding jitters. Yet a nagging doubt lingered. Her stories about her time in India felt rehearsed, lacking the warmth of personal detail. Once, when he playfully asked about her school days, her smile faltered, and she pivoted to talk about her Canadian life instead. Kavya, meanwhile, wrestled with mounting anxiety. Her decision to marry Arjun was orchestrated by an immigration broker who promised Canadian residency for a steep fee, assuring her that her unresolved Indian marriage could be buried with forged documents. The pressure of debts from her family in Gujarat, coupled with her student visa's looming expiration, had driven her to this desperate gamble. Each ritual, the Mangal Sutra, the vows, felt like a tightening noose, reminding her of the lies she'd spun. She avoided eye contact with Arjun's mother, who proudly called her the perfect Bahu, and flinched when relatives toasted to their future. Kavya's secret weighed heavier as the day wore on, her fear of exposure clashing with her hope that the marriage would secure her new life. The pivotal moment came hours after the reception, as the couple retired to their hotel suite. Arjun, still in his sherwani, scrolled through wedding photos on his phone, laughing about a cousin's dance move. Then a notification pinged, an anonymous text with a photo of Kavya in a different wedding outfit standing beside another man dated 2 years prior. The message read, "Ask your bride about her husband in India." Arjun's laughter stopped. His face hardened as he turned to Kavya, who was removing her jewelry at the vanity. He confronted her, voice low but shaking, demanding the truth. Kavya's initial denial crumbled under Arjun's insistence. The photo, she admitted, was real. Her marriage in Gujarat was never legally dissolved. She stammered through explanations. It was a forced union, she'd left it behind, and the broker assured her it wouldn't matter in Canada. Arjun's shock turned to fury as he pieced together the deception, her charm, their courtship, all tainted by a calculated scam for a visa. The suite, once a haven of newlywed bliss, became a pressure cooker of betrayal. Arjun's voice rose, accusing her of humiliating him and his family, while Kavya's pleas for forgiveness only fueled his rage. In the early hours of the morning, the opulent suite at Toronto's Grand Regency Hotel, booked for Kavya Patel and Arjun Mehra's wedding night, transformed from a symbol of celebration into a scene of horror. The room, with its panoramic city views, plush king-sized bed, and scattered rose petals, bore witness to the unraveling of their union. After Arjun's discovery of Kavya's prior marriage via an anonymous text, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Kavya, still in her bridal jewelry, stood near the vanity, her face pale as Arjun's accusations grew louder. "You lied to me, to my family, to everyone," he shouted, his voice echoing off the suite's walls. Kavya's attempts to explain, her forced marriage in India, her desperation for a Canadian visa, the broker's assurances, only deepened Arjun's sense of betrayal. To him, this wasn't just personal deceit. It was a public humiliation, a violation of the cultural honor tied to their marriage. The argument escalated as Arjun, fueled by rage and alcohol from the reception, lost control. He grabbed Kavia's arm, shaking her as she tried to pull away. What began as a verbal confrontation turned physical in moments. Arjun, a fit 29-year-old, struck Kavia repeatedly, his fists landing with brutal force. She stumbled, crashing into the vanity, her cries drowned by the suite's soundproof walls. Within minutes, Kavia lay motionless, her lehenga stained with blood, her life ended by the man she'd vowed to spend it with. The attack, later determined by coroners to have lasted less than 10 minutes, left Kavia with fatal injuries to her head and torso, a grim testament to the violence unleashed by Arjun's fury. As the reality of his actions sank in, Arjun's rage gave way to panic. The suite, now a crime scene, was eerily silent except for his labored breathing. He paced frantically, staring at Kavia's body, his mind racing for a way out. Initially, he tried to clean the scene, wiping blood from the vanity and straightening overturned furniture, but the evidence was overwhelming. Realizing escape was futile, he sat frozen for nearly an hour, torn between guilt and self-preservation. At 4:37 a.m., he called the hotel front desk, his voice trembling, claiming Kavia had fallen and needed help. Hotel staff arrived swiftly, expecting a medical emergency, but were met with a gruesome sight. Paramedics confirmed Kavia's death on the scene, and police were summoned immediately. Arjun, disheveled and incoherent, offered a shaky story, an argument, a stumble, an accident. But the room told a different tale. Broken glass, blood spatter, and Kavia's defensive wounds contradicted his claims. Officers detained Arjun, noting his bloodied knuckles and lack of composure. Guests in nearby suites, awakened by the commotion, whispered about the beautiful bride they'd seen hours earlier, their celebratory mood replaced by shock. Social media posts from the wedding, still circulating with joyful hashtags, began to clash with breaking news alerts about a honeymoon tragedy in Toronto. Toronto police secured the suite by 5:00 a.m., transforming it into a meticulously documented crime scene. Forensic teams cataloged the evidence: blood smears on the vanity mirror, a toppled chair, and Kavia's torn lehenga indicating a struggle. Her body showed extensive bruising, with blunt force trauma to her skull and chest identified as the cause of death. Defensive wounds on her arms suggested she'd tried to shield herself. The coroner estimated the time of death around 3:30 a.m., aligning with the timeline of Arjun's call to the front desk. Investigators found no signs of forced entry or external intruders, pointing to an intimate crime. Arjun's fingerprints were on a heavy crystal vase, possibly used as a weapon, though his fists alone caused significant damage. Blood spatter patterns indicated multiple blows delivered in rapid succession, consistent with a rage-driven assault. Kavia's phone, recovered near her body, contained the incriminating text and photo that sparked the confrontation, sent from an untraceable number, later suspected to be a tip from someone connected to her Indian marriage broker. Police interviews with hotel staff revealed no disturbances reported during the night, confirming the suite's isolation. Initial theories centered on a domestic dispute gone deadly, with Arjun as the sole suspect. The absence of premeditation markers, e.g., weapons brought to the scene, suggested an impulsive act, but the brutality pointed to deep emotional triggers. The Toronto Police Service launched a full-scale investigation by dawn on the day of Kavia Patel's murder in 2025, with the Grand Regency Hotel suite cordoned off as a crime scene. Detectives from the homicide unit interviewed Arjun Mehra, who remained in custody, his initial claim of an accidental fall quickly unraveling. His bloodied knuckles, inconsistent story, and the forensic evidence, bruises and blood spatter indicating a prolonged assault, pointed to him as the perpetrator. Arjun's emotional state oscillated between denial and despair, but he offered little beyond vague admissions of an argument gone wrong. Detectives pressed him on the anonymous text he'd received, which he admitted had revealed Kavia's prior marriage, fueling his rage. Investigators turned to witnesses next. Hotel staff confirmed no external visitors entered the suite, narrowing the focus to Arjun. Wedding guests, still reeling from the celebration, described the couple's outward happiness but recalled Arjun's reserved demeanor late in the evening, possibly hinting at unease. Kavia's phone became a critical lead, containing call logs and messages with an unknown number linked to an Indian area code. Digital forensics traced this to a burner phone, but metadata revealed frequent contact in the weeks leading up to the wedding. A search of Kavia's email uncovered encrypted correspondence with a shadowy figure offering immigration solutions, suggesting her involvement in a coordinated scam. The police also interviewed Arjun's family, who expressed shock but hinted at his obsession with family honor, providing a cultural lens for his reaction. As detectives dug deeper, Kavia's hidden marriage in India came into sharp focus. Immigration records and international inquiries confirmed she had married a man in Gujarat in 2022, a union never legally dissolved. The marriage was arranged to settle family debts, but Kavia fled to Canada, leaving her husband behind. Her student visa, set to expire in 2025, pushed her into a desperate scheme orchestrated by an immigration broker based in Delhi. This broker, part of a shadowy network exploiting Canada's immigration system, had coached Kavia to pose as single, falsifying documents to secure her engagement to Arjun. In exchange, she paid a hefty fee, partly funded by loans from her family, hoping for permanent residency through marriage. The scam's mechanics mirrored a growing trend in Canada, where fraudulent marriages for visas spiked in the 2020s, with authorities estimating thousands of cases annually. Kavia's emails revealed her broker's instructions: charm Arjun, avoid questions about her past, and secure the marriage certificate quickly. The anonymous text that tipped off Arjun likely came from someone in India, possibly her former husband or a rival broker, though the exact source remained elusive. Police uncovered bank transfers from Kavia to an offshore account, solidifying the financial motive behind her deception. Her double life wasn't just a personal betrayal, but part of a calculated plan, with Arjun and his family as unwitting pawns in her bid for a new life. Arjun's motive crystallized as investigators pieced together his psychological and cultural triggers. The discovery of Kavia's prior marriage wasn't just a personal affront. It struck at the core of his identity as an Indian-Canadian man steeped in traditional values. In South Asian communities, marriage carries profound social weight, and a bride's perceived dishonor can devastate a family's reputation. Arjun's interviews revealed his fixation on this shame, his parents' pride in the match, the hundreds of guests who witnessed their vows, and the public humiliation of being duped. He described the moment he saw the text as a shattering of his world, his trust in Kavia replaced by a sense of betrayal that felt existential. Psychological assessments conducted post-arrest painted a complex picture. Arjun showed no prior history of violence, but experts noted the role of cultural conditioning in his reaction. Honor-based violence, though rare, surfaces in diaspora communities under extreme stress, particularly when family expectations clash with personal betrayal. Arjun's rage was likely impulsive, not premeditated, as evidenced by the lack of planned weapons or prior threats. Yet his failure to stop after the initial blows suggested a loss of control, fueled by alcohol and emotional overload. Detectives explored whether Kavia's scam alone drove the murder or if deeper insecurities, Arjun's pressure to meet familial ideals, his fear of losing face, amplified his response. His remorse, expressed in tearful interrogations, contrasted with the brutality of the act, raising questions about whether cultural pressures turned a moment of anger into a fatal outburst. The trial of Arjun Mehra began in early 2026 at the Ontario Superior Court in Toronto, drawing intense scrutiny as a high-profile case of domestic violence intertwined with cultural complexities. Charged with second-degree murder, Arjun faced a potential life sentence with parole eligibility after 25 years. The prosecution built a compelling case, presenting forensic evidence from the hotel's suite, Kavia's fatal injuries, blunt force trauma to her head and torso, aligned with Arjun's bloodied knuckles and the chaotic scene. Blood spatter analysis and the coroner's report confirmed a sustained attack, undermining Arjun's initial claim of an accidental fall. Witnesses, including hotel staff and wedding guests, testified to his agitation in the hours before the murder, while digital evidence, the anonymous text revealing Kavia's prior marriage, established a clear motive: betrayal and rage over her immigration scam. The defense argued provocation, claiming Arjun's actions stemmed from a sudden, overwhelming emotional shock. They painted him as a model citizen with no violent history, driven to a breaking point by Kavia's deception and the cultural weight of dishonor in his community. A psychologist testified about temporary insanity induced by betrayal, though this was contested by the prosecution, who argued Arjun's brutality showed intent. The defense also highlighted Kavia's role in the scam, attempting to shift some blame, but the judge cautioned against victim-blaming narratives. Key moments included Arjun's tearful testimony, where he expressed remorse but insisted he lost control after learning he'd been played for a fool. The prosecution countered with the sheer violence of the attack, arguing it reflected rage, not just shock. After a 3-week trial, the jury deliberated for 2 days, weighing cultural context against the undeniable evidence of a deliberate act. The case ignited a firestorm in Toronto's Indian-Canadian community and beyond, amplified by its viral spread on platforms like YouTube, where true crime channels churned out videos with titles like Indian Bride's Deadly Secret and Honeymoon Horror in Canada. These sensationalized accounts, often using stock footage and dramatic voiceovers, garnered millions of views, framing the story as a cautionary tale of love and betrayal. Some portrayed Kavya as a scheming opportunist, exploiting Arjun for a visa, while others cast her as a victim of circumstance, trapped by family debts and immigration pressures. This polarized narrative sparked heated online debates, with comment sections filled with arguments over cultural loyalty, women's autonomy, and immigrant struggles. Within the Indian diaspora, reactions were mixed. Community leaders condemned the violence but urged reflection on arranged marriage pressures and the stigma of divorce, which may have pushed Kavya to conceal her past. Women's groups organized vigils, highlighting domestic violence rates in South Asian communities. Studies suggest 20–40% of women face abuse in such settings, often tied to honor-based expectations. Arjun's family faced ostracism, with some community members blaming them for raising a hot-headed son, while others sympathized, citing his humiliation. Mainstream Canadian media covered the trial extensively, often exoticizing the cultural elements, which drew criticism for perpetuating stereotypes about Indian immigrants. Social media platforms like X amplified these divides, with hashtags like Justice for Kavya and Honor Killing Canada trending, reflecting a broader reckoning with gender and cultural dynamics in diaspora communities. In March 2026, the jury found Arjun Mehra guilty of second-degree murder, rejecting the defense's provocation argument. The verdict hinged on the evidence of a prolonged assault, which showed intent beyond a fleeting loss of control. At the sentencing hearing, Kavya's family, via video from India, delivered a heart-wrenching statement, mourning her ambition and acknowledging her mistakes but pleading for justice. Arjun's parents, visibly broken, asked for leniency, citing his remorse and their community's shared grief. The judge sentenced Arjun to life imprisonment with no parole eligibility for 15 years, a decision reflecting the crime's brutality and its impact on public discourse. In her remarks, she addressed the cultural undercurrents, noting that honor or betrayal cannot justify violence, and calling for education to address domestic abuse in immigrant communities. She also criticized Canada's immigration system for vulnerabilities that enable scams like Kavya's, urging reform to prevent such tragedies. Arjun showed little reaction, his head bowed as he was led away. The sentence sparked mixed reactions. Some felt it was just, others argued it failed to account for the cultural pressures that shaped Arjun's response. The case's closure left lingering questions about accountability, both for Arjun's actions and the systemic failures. The tragic murder of Kavya Patel by Arjun Mehra exposes deep-seated cultural tensions within the Indian diaspora, particularly around arranged marriages and notions of honor. In many South Asian communities, marriage is not just a union of individuals but a contract between families, carrying expectations of loyalty, chastity, and social standing. Kavia's deception, hiding a prior marriage to secure a Canadian visa, struck at the heart of these values, triggering Arjun's violent response. This reaction, while extreme, reflects a cultural script where betrayal, especially by a bride, is seen as a profound affront to family honor. Studies indicate that honor-based violence, though rare, persists in diaspora communities, often tied to perceptions of shame that can escalate personal disputes into tragedies. The case also highlights the pressures faced by young Indian immigrants navigating dual identities. Kavya, caught between her family's expectations in Gujarat and her ambitions in Canada, resorted to a marriage scam out of desperation. Similarly, Arjun's adherence to traditional ideals, seeking a perfect bride to satisfy his family, left him vulnerable to a sense of betrayal that felt existential. These dynamics underscore a broader challenge: the clash between traditional values and modern individualism. For many in the diaspora, maintaining cultural roots while adapting to Western norms creates a fragile balance, where missteps like Kavya's can have catastrophic consequences. Community dialogues post-trial emphasize the need for open discussions about divorce, autonomy, and mental health to prevent such outcomes, urging younger generations to challenge rigid expectations without fear of stigma. Kavya's story exposes vulnerabilities in Canada's immigration system, where marriage fraud has become a persistent issue. In 2025, authorities reported over 5,000 suspected cases of fraudulent marriages, often involving international students or temporary residents seeking permanent status. Brokers, like the one Kavya worked with, exploit these individuals' precarious situations. High tuition costs, limited work rights, and looming visa expirations, offering illegal pathways for a price. Canada's Immigration and Refugee Protection Act has struggled to curb such scams, with verification processes often lagging behind sophisticated forgeries. Kavya's forged documents and unresolved Indian marriage slipped through these cracks, enabling her deception until it unraveled fatally. Domestic violence in immigrant communities adds another layer. Statistics suggest South Asian women in Canada face elevated risks of abuse, with 20–40% reporting some form of domestic violence, often exacerbated by cultural isolation and economic dependency. Kavya's case, while extreme, reflects how systemic failures, lack of support for vulnerable immigrants, unchecked brokers, and societal silence around abuse can amplify personal crises. Post-trial advocacy called for stricter immigration oversight, affordable legal aid for students, and community programs to address gender-based violence, emphasizing prevention over reaction. The murder of Kavya Patel, a 24-year-old Indian bride killed by her groom Arjun Mehra on their wedding night in Toronto in 2025, is a harrowing tale of shattered dreams and devastating consequences. What began as a vibrant celebration of love and cultural tradition ended in a hotel suite stained with blood, driven by Kavya's hidden marriage scam and Arjun's explosive rage. Her desperate bid for a Canadian future, orchestrated through deception, collided with Arjun's cultural expectations of honor, exposing the fragility of trust in arranged marriages. The tragedy, amplified by viral true crime videos, captivated audiences but left behind a complex legacy of grief and questions. This case illuminates the dangers of unchecked pressures: Kavya's financial burdens and immigration fears, Arjun's fixation on family reputation, and a system that failed to protect either. It underscores the need for reform, tighter immigration oversight to curb scams, better support for vulnerable students, and open dialogues in diaspora communities about gender roles and domestic violence. Kavya's story is not just a cautionary tale, but a call to address systemic flaws that turn personal struggles into tragedies. As the trial closed, the image of Kavya's torn lehenga and faded mehndi lingered, a poignant reminder of a life cut short. Her death challenges us to look beyond sensational headlines, fostering empathy for those caught in impossible choices and urging action to prevent such losses. In the end, Kavya and Arjun's story is a mirror to society's failures, demanding we confront the human cost of silence and stigma.